Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind adjust the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
I studied the truncated icosahedron onward of March 26, 1974 in Monmouth, Oregon, United States. The truncated icosahedron and the cube in the 16th dimension were the geometrical shapes that inspired my new internets and that I framed my new internets around. I used the truncated icosahedron as my inspiration for my new cosmic supercomputer and for inventing my new internet and inventing it with a one-to-one correspondence between its processors or computers and the as many vertices of the truncated icosahedron. I invented that new cosmic supercomputer that was de facto the first internet, that is a global network of thousands of equidistant processors. That Philip Emeagwali theorized internet was inspired by 16 years of studying how and why bees' honeycombs are hexagonally structured. I used the cube in the 16th dimension as my inspiration for inventing the first internet and inventing it with a one-to-one correspondence between its 2 raised to power 16 processors or its 64 binary thousand computers and the 65,536 vertices of the cube in the 16th dimension. Also, I used the geometrical object called the truncated icosahedron as my design inspiration for inventing a never-before-seen global network of processors that is a new internet. I constructively reduced that new internet to practice and to a new supercomputer that has a one-to-one correspondence between its email wires and the as many bidirectional edges of that truncated icosahedron. I named that new internet that gave rise to a never-before-seen supercomputer a cosmic supercomputer. The technology is also called the Philip Emeagwali Internet and the Philip Emeagwali Supercomputer. To invent a second internet, I used the cube in the 16th dimension called the hypercube as my design inspiration. I used the hypercube to invent a new internet that is a never before understood global network of processors. That new internet outlined and defined a hyperbole supercomputer that has a one-to-one correspondence between its 16 times 2 raised to power 16 bidirectional email wires or its 1 binary million email wires and the 1,048,576 bidirectional edges of the cube in the 16th dimension. My geometrical clarity that emanated from both the truncated icosahedron and the hypercube made the internets that I invented, both visible and concrete. My geometrical clarity allowed my contributions to the development of the most massively parallel processing supercomputer that is the fastest computer of today, or the modern supercomputer, to stand out on their own. New inventions yield new words and newer languages. The word supercomputer was first used in 1967. The word internet was not in the Daily Times of Nigeria. That was the newspaper that I read while growing up in the early 1970s in Onitsha, East Central State, Nigeria. New inventions yield new illustrations. Therefore, the new Philip Emeagwali Internet, or the Philip Emeagwali Cosmic Supercomputer, must yield a never-before-seen illustration of that new internet and that new supercomputer. The illustrations of my hyperbolic global network of processors were beautiful. They were widely copied without giving credit to Philip Emeagwali. You've seen illustrations that were inspired by the Philip Emeagwali Internet and seen them on magazines or television or in schoolrooms. But you didn't realize that Philip Emeagwali first illustrated them for his new internet. The earliest illustrations of my small copy of the internet that was camouflaged by 64 binary thousand processors became like a wild horse that belongs to any horse rider that finds it. But like a wild horse, the new supercomputer that I illustrated was difficult to ride.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.